Hey everyone, Bandit here. Let me just start this video off by saying there have been a lot of really good lore breakdown videos out there and being produced right now that have been both a blessing and a curse to me trying to make these videos. On the one hand, I love learning about the universe of Elden Ring since I'm obviously trying to create videos explaining Elden Ring, links to them in the description below, but on the other hand, I was actually going to talk about Radahn next, you know, the badass. But there's a really good video out on him currently, which is great. Then I was gonna do Miquella, and then Melina, and then Godwyn, but there are already some great lore breakdown videos out on each of them currently. So if you guys are interested in hearing about these characters, please do check these other videos out that I mentioned. I don't think I'll be covering them on this channel because those videos have already done such a gosh darn great job keeping things PG in here, and especially check out the ones from Arlen Grimm. That guy has a great, very professional way of piecing everything together. Anyway, my search for a character that hasn't been fully delved into yet on the YouTubes, at least as of writing this script, would be your one, your only Finger Maiden Melina. Except she's only just playing the role of the Finger Maiden, but more on that later. And of course, I will be explaining the character's full story in a way that anyone can understand. Although, Melina is admittedly perhaps the most vague character to understand in a game that's already full of vague characters, which means that there are inevitably going to be a couple theories present in this video, more so than the previous breakdown videos. Actually, forewarning, this is going to be roughly 65 to 70% theory, but hey, we're all fans here, so play nice if you don't agree, okay? I will also be covering everything we know about her factually in-game as well, so you may as well just sit tight and see what I have to say. Oh, also, spoilers. In this video, Biggins, you've been warned. Let's start by talking about the surprisingly little amount of actual confirmed facts we have on Melina in-game. Once you start playing, and after you've been served your first dose of humble pie by getting stabbed a bunch of times by this friendly-looking chap, you then see your character dead on the ground in some sort of tomb. And while you're just lying there dreaming of better times and easier games, you suddenly see feet. Animal feet. Torrent, the goat horse, or Gorse as I affectionately call him, sniffs at you, then you hear a voice. Melina's voice. She tells Torrent that fortune is on your side and that you, or one of your kind, are sure to search for the Elden Ring, even if it does violate the Golden Order. Which seems like a very odd thing to say, but then the screen goes black and you wake up later with the duo being nowhere to be found. But why was she here in the first place? And what business does she have with a dead hero that might violate the Golden Order that just got their butt handed to them by the human centipede? According to Melina's own words, she was born at the foot of the Erd Tree, where her mother gave Melina her purpose, which she has since forgotten. To make matters more intriguing, she also mentions that her mother gave her said purpose from inside the Erd Tree long ago. You know who's inside the Erd Tree? Queen Marika, the Eternal. Yeah, weirdly enough. Also, Melina is dead. She says it herself. She is, quote, burned and bodiless, which explains the whole fading in and out of thin air thing. But this is what answers why Melina sought you out when she found you in that tomb earlier. See, after playing for a short while, she appears at a site of grace and offers you an accord by asking to take her with you on your way to the Elden Ring, which just so happens to be inside the Erd Tree. She wants to go back to where she was born and where she received her purpose from her mother because she has forgotten what her purpose is, and she wants to go there to ascertain it for herself. She then gives you the spectral steed whistle with which to summon Torrent the Gorse for yourself, and then she fades away. A little bit later, she will appear once again by a site of grace and offer you passage to the Round Table Hold, which is a location where tarnished warriors can gather and bolster each other and receive smithing help from a Master Hugh, who is imprisoned there by order of Queen Marika. Throughout the game, Melina will appear here and there giving you dialogue from Queen Marika in the past that she can hear for some reason, and eventually when you reach the Erd Tree and Leyndell, she will thank you for escorting her there and then leave. For like 2 seconds, because right after you kill Morgott for good this time and try to enter the Erd Tree, the roots of the Erd Tree will be sealed off with the symbol of Radagon's Great Rune, preventing entry from you or anyone else. When you rest out of grace after that, Melina pops up again and says that you need to become Elden Lord and pass through those runes, and her purpose that she is now confident in is to assist you with getting past those thorns. The way to do this is by setting the Erd Tree on fire with the Flame of Ruin found way up high in the mountaintops of the giants. You eventually make your way there and beat the alleged last living fire giant, then are able to come across the Flame of Ruin. And this is where Melina's story can split one way or another. What she wants to do at this point is fulfill her purpose and be the sacrifice, the kindling, which is required for the Flame of Ruin to set the Erd Tree ablaze, which will affect actively kill herself in the act and end her story. However, the much more interesting details come from the alternate route where you follow the path of the Lord of Chaos by serving the Frenzied Flame, which Melina will tell you repeatedly to stay away from on your quest. Before kindling the Flame of Ruin, if you choose to go and meet the Three Fingers who will singe your body with the scars of frenzy, Melina will then notice what you've done and will leave you. But before leaving, she will promise you that, should you become the Lord of Chaos, she will hunt you down and kill you. And if you go on to become the Lord of Chaos, then sure enough, after you're done gloating about getting a sick new hairdo, Melina pops up. She walks into the middle of the Erd Tree after you're gone and finds Torrent's whistle. And we can even hear the whistle in this section of the cutscene, which is quite sad. And while she holds Torrent's whistle, it burns away in her hand, implying that the Flame of Frenzy, which is meant to destroy differences between all life forms and combine everything by burning everything, similar to what happened in Neon Genesis Evangelion, has in fact started by burning and killing poor little Torrent, your faithful gorse steed who chose to serve you. Melina then delivers the most chilling line in the entire game by addressing you as the Lord of Frenzied Flame and saying, "I will seek you as far as you may travel to deliver you what is yours, destined death." And when the camera pans up to her face, we can see that the one golden eye that she's looked out of the entire game is now glossed over in gray, no longer shimmering gold. And her other eye, which has been closed the whole game, opens up as well, revealing her true eye color to be a bluish purple. And that is the end of everything we know about Melina in the game. Like I said, she's extremely vague. But here is where we're going to pivot and switch into theory mode for the remainder of the video to piece together how she's connected to Marika, and why her eye is weird, and why being the Lord of Chaos pisses her off so much. You know, besides the whole betrayal and murder of Torrent, that is. Because let's face it, that pisses me off too. Let's start with what is perhaps the most intriguing and obvious design choice with Melina, her eyes. They've got several things going on there. At the end of the game, not only do we see her closed eye opened, but her opened eye has faded from color. Personally, I think this means that the grace which was keeping her spirit alive and giving her eye that golden color has faded away as a result of everything burning in the frenzied flame. And we now see that another power, maybe even her own, is granting her life by looking at the color of her opened tattoo eye. Now, most people, including myself, when seeing Melina's eye being closed with a tat over it, immediately thought of the other most recognizable face in the entire game, Ranni the Witch, and how she also has a closed eye with a similar tat over it on the opposite side of her face, although I can't tell if it's the same marking or not. This is actually just one of several strange similarities that the two girls have in common, the others being the fact that they are both spirits that fade in and out of thin air with the exact same sound effects and blue particle magic effect. They both have ties too and are the only characters that mention Torrent several times throughout the game, even remembering to thank the steed for his service. They both give you spectral items, they both speak with a very slow and clear voice, they both appear to be around the same age visually, they both had their original bodies burned away, and the biggest one is that technically Ranni's real face, the spirit face mirrored to her doll face that's attached at the eye, has the eye closed correctly oriented and matches up exactly with Melina's facial structure. I don't think it's possible to not compare the two and try to find some sort of connection as far as lore is concerned. And indeed, many people have been trying to non-stop since the game was released. The problem is that there isn't an obvious connection between them besides their similarities I already mentioned. So I decided to look harder. I pondered what the shared tattoo could be for the longest time, like whether it was a tattoo of the fingers or something like that. There are 3 protruding finger-like shapes though, so if it were a tattoo of the fingers, it would have to be the 3 fingers. But Melina hates the 3 fingers and the frenzied flame, so that's unlikely. I was at a loss until I stumbled across somebody on the internet, and I'm so sorry, but I forgot who it was, that mentioned it actually looks like a crow foot. And honestly, that makes perfect sense for several reasons, because not only are crow feet shaped exactly the same way, with the 4th digit being behind the front 3, but the talons can each also individually bend down like the one shown on the right side of Melina's tattoo. And get this, the term crow feet is also used in real life as a term to refer to the wrinkles at the edge of your eyes. Wink wink, hint hint. But what does a crowfoot have to do with anything in Elden Ring? Well, symbolically, crows have always been a representation of death, just in general. I think it's a similar situation in this case, and because of that, it actually serves to connect Melina to another widely believed theory about her origin. And that would be that she is, or used to be, none other than the mysterious entity known as the Gloam-Eyed Queen, or the Dusk-Eyed Queen, depending on what item description you're reading. The Gloam-Eyed Queen is mentioned several several times in various item descriptions. So it's clear that the developers wanted us to think about who she might have been or possibly even still is. And annoyingly, we know that they have no problem with using code names for otherwise well-known characters just to be confusing. Like when they continually referred to Melina as the Valkyrie in the Shaded Castle for no reason. So I think they're definitely doing something similar with the Dusk-Eyed Queen. Both gloam and dusk are words that mean twilight, which is the section of the day that bridges the sunlight and moonlight together. And Melina's opened tattoo eye has a bluish purple color, which is literally the color of a twilight sky. Additionally, the Gloam-Eyed Queen was said to be the leader of the Godskin Apostles, who, get this, worshipped and followed the Rune of Death, also known as Destined Death. And wouldn't you know it, after Melina remembers her purpose, all of a sudden she starts talking about how the world needs a good dose of death indiscriminate, which means it would be everyone's destiny to die, and of course at the end there is the infamous threat of giving you your destined death, which is a very blatant call out. I mean guys, these things are clearly meant to stick out to us so that we can connect them with other pieces of lore. Melina is clearly connected in some inexplicable way to destined death, and adding her gloomy eye to the mix, it really feels like she's got to be related to the Gloam-Eyed Queen somehow. So let's switch gears briefly and talk about who the Gloam-Eyed Queen is. We know that she existed long before the events of the game and that she was actually an Empyrean, and was even chosen by her own two fingers. As a quick reminder, an Empyrean is an individual who has the power or ability or permission to become a vassal to an outer god, becoming a god themselves, just like Queen Marika. We also know that prior to Malekith's possession of the Rune of Death, which is something I explained more in the Marika video, it was the Gloam-Eyed Queen that was in possession of it. It's what gave her and her followers the ability to wield the Black Flame, which comes from the Gloam-Eyed Queen's sword, called the Godslayer Greatsword. When the Black Flame was superpowered by Destined Death, it had the power to kill gods, which was the Godskin's ultimate goal. But why try to kill gods in the first place? And how did the Gloam-Eyed Queen manage to get her hands on the Rune of Death in between its fusion with the Elden Ring and its possession by Malekith? Here's what I think this all means. Since it specifically states that the source of the Black Flame, the Godskin Apostles' power, comes from the sword of their leader, the Gloam-Eyed Queen, and that they, quote, serve Destined Death directly, and that Destined Death is a rune that was plucked from the Golden Order, aka Marika's Elden Ring, and since the defeat of the Gloam-Eyed Queen by Malekith also meant the sealing away of Destined Death into Malekith, and conveniently the disappearance of the Gloam-Eyed Queen, I think that the Rune of Death was literally the Gloam-Eyed Queen, just like I think the Great Rune depicted on Radagon's seal literally is Radagon himself. Throughout the game, as I've talked about in the other videos, we continually see Empyrean people that are literal vessels of runes. Marika the Empyrean was the Elden Ring, Radagon was also a Great Rune, possibly the Rune of Order, Ranni was the Great Rune of the Unborn, and now the Gloam-Eyed Queen, an Empyrean, is the Rune of Death, which when it separated from the Golden Order became an actual living person that was set on doing one thing, delivering everyone their destiny of death, in order for them to die and be reborn of the Erdtree, which is the way life was originally designed to cycle. She wanted to deliver death indiscriminate, which should sound familiar, starting with Queen Marika, the god who defied death. That's why Destined Death, aka the Dusk-Eyed Queen, channeled her god-slaying power through her sword, creating the omnipotent Black Flame that served as the ultimate death for all beings, and creating her own cult of Godskin Apostles to follow and aid her in the war against Marika the Eternal. In response, Marika sent her shadow, Malekith, to fight against the Gloam-Eyed Queen and her army, and when he defeated her, he absorbed her rune into himself, removing Destined Death from the world and crippling the power of the Black Flame while also corrupting his own mind irreparably. Since this was all Marika's doing and therefore her own will that Destined Death should be removed and kept removed in the first place, and placed in her half-brother Malekith for safekeeping, I believe that is why it says in-game that she betrayed her brother Malekith. But now let's jump back to Melina. Like I mentioned before, she does seem connected to the Dusk-Eyed Queen because of her gloam eye and her death tattoo and her weird obsession with bringing the world death that does not discriminate. But the biggest question is, how is she connected? Well, let's think back to where Melina says she came from. She says she was born at the foot of the Erdtree. This is what the foot of a tree looks like. It's right where the roots begin, actually. Kind of a strange place to have a baby if you ask me, and I know that according to the description of a Golden Rune 6, there is a legend that being born at the foot of the Erdtree brings good fortune, but Melina is a bit different, because remember how she says not only that she was born there, but that her mother gave her her purpose from inside the tree? And remember how I said Marika is the only person we know of in that tree? Well, that's not actually completely true. See, Melina specifically says that her mother is inside the tree, and the only reason Marika ever entered the tree to our knowledge was to shatter the Elden Ring, after which she was imprisoned by the Greater Will and rendered unable to move, or birth children for that matter. And now that I'm talking about it, it is weird that Melina talks a lot about Marika, but never confirms that Marika specifically is her mother. But there's no other mother inside the Erd Tree, right? Wrong, there is someone else that could fit the description of a mother, and that would be the Rune of Death, the Gloam-Eyed Queen. The description of the godskin swaddling cloth states that the Gloam-Eyed Queen would swaddle newborn apostles with the cloth. And swaddling a newborn means you were present for their birth, which means that they were most likely her own children that she had just given birth to, explaining the existence of the godskin apostles and giving the Dusk-Eyed Queen the ability to be called a mother. And according to the description of Deathroot, after Ranni stole the Rune of Death and the murders transpired on the Night of the Black Knives, the Rune of Death spread throughout the land, giving rise to those who live in death by way of the roots of the Great Tree, which again is another word for the Erd Tree, not sure why they use different words sometimes. And Melina was born specifically at the foot of the Erd Tree with her mother inside the tree, at its roots, where destined death, the Gloam-Eyed Queen, was spreading. I think this means that Melina is either the daughter or the reincarnation of destined death itself. But there are still some remaining questions that need to be answered, like what about Melina's body, which she says was burned? And why is Ranni so similar to her? And why do they both know Torrent? Keep watching, we're getting there and we're almost done with this wild ride. Remember that Ranni fessed up to being the mastermind behind all of the events that transpired on the Night of the Black Knives, which means that she must have also been the one who injected the roots of the Erd Tree with the Rune of Death, since she was the one who stole it and was last in possession of it. That means it was her plan for Deathroot to spread through the land between. But why? Well, like I explained in much more detail in the Ranni video, she plotted to overthrow the entire Golden Order, and she's successful depending on one thing, and that one thing is you, the player tarnished. See, her plan doesn't go anywhere after the Night of Black Knives if you don't sign up to help her out, because Ranni isn't stupid. She knows that she alone can't defeat the God Queen Marika or the Elden Beast residing inside. She needed someone more powerful to do it for her. A tarnished warrior with a blessing of grace, for instance. This is why she can only be summoned after the final fight, immediately remarking that the battle is over, which proves that she was concerned about it, but also that you executed her plan swimmingly. But before any of that could happen, she also knew that the Erd Tree itself was closed off, barring anyone from entry by the magical rune of Radagon, her father. So, as she did with everything else, she devised a plan to get rid of the magical barrier. And that plan was to use destined death to rebirth the Gloam-Eyed Queen and have her find and guide a tarnished warrior with fortune on their side to the Erd Tree, and then burn it down to allow them entry. I think Ranni may have only used half of her essence to inhabit the form she's in today, since it is pretty weird that her spirit appears to be only half connected to her doll body. I mean, seriously, what gives? That's the only explanation I can think of for this very odd design choice. The other half of her essence may have been fused with the Rune of Death in order to spread it through the roots of the Erd Tree to be reborn out of the tree, thus creating Melina and explaining why she has a yellow grace eye and why she looks exactly like Ranni's spirit face and why her magic looks the same, etc, etc. And if this is true, then this means that Torrent was originally Ranni's pony, and that she may have even created him as a spectral steed so that Melina could use him to find the tarnished warrior. And after Melina and Torrent found you and gave you Torrent's calling whistle, Ranni found out about it and paid you a visit personally. However, upon meeting you for the first time, she lies to you and says that her name is actually Renna, but then gives you a spirit calling bell from supposedly Torrent's former owner. I think she was actually Torrent's former and original owner, and that she lied to you because she was testing you by concealing her actual identity. She wanted to know for sure that you were the one fate had chosen for her, the one with fortune on your side. That's why she waits for you alone in her tower and makes sure that you want to help her out, even though she tells you she doesn't recall giving you an invitation and says that fate itself must have steered you to her. So to recap all this crazy theorizing in a nutshell, basically, I'm insinuating that long ago ago, Marika plucked the Rune of Death from the Elden Ring, which created the Golden Order. The Rune of Death became Destined Death, also known as the Gloam-Eyed Queen, bent on returning death to the world and creating the Godskin Apostles. Marika sent Malekith to kill Destined Death and absorb it into his body. Later, Ranni learned of all this nonsense and decided to steal the Rune of Death from Malekith and use it to slay her own physical body, then infuse it into the roots of the Erd Tree with half of her spirit essence. Destined Death, now fused with some of Ranni's essence, was reborn at the base of the Erd Tree as Melina, with the purpose of finding a Tarnished with fortune on their side and guiding them to the Erd Tree, sacrificing herself to burn it down and allow them access. This is why Melina gets so peeved at you for choosing the path of the Frenzied Flame, because not only do you deny her of her true purpose and kill Torrent, but you also become an eternal being, who she, now without grace and guided by her true nature, is destined to bring death to. And that, my friends, is a hell of a theory. Complicated, but understandable. And with lore like this, I'm finding more and more each day that nothing is ever as simple as it seems at first in this game, and most things are connected in some way to one another. Like, I didn't even go into Deathroot creating those who live in death, which created the Ghost Flame, which created the Death Birds, the mother of which is something called the Twin Bird, which is said to be the envoy of another outer god. But this video is already packed enough, and I'll explain that in another video if you guys want. That being said though, thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed it. Please consider leaving a like below, as these videos take a lot of time and effort to make and piece together, and it really helps out with the algorithm. And for the love of Marika, subscribe to stick around for lots more. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this video and what you'd like me to cover next, and that's all I've got for this one. So as always, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. This is Bandit, looking forward to seeing you next time, and signing out. Peace!